Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going through my round 10 AFL tips. So let's see how we did last week to start off. First off, before we do begin, I do want to apologise that the energy isn't that high in this video. I am feeling a bit unwell at the moment, as you can probably tell by my voice. So we will see how we did last week. Now last week I ended up only really getting 4 out of 9 if you do count the draw, because on ESPN it does but not on Super Breeze. So I got 3 or 4 depending on how you'd like to call it. I got the Freo Collingwood game correct. I did get the Saints tip incorrect. Look, we were just couldn't kick straight, and some of our kicks were just really poor, which ultimately cost us the game in the end. Got the Hawthorn tip correct. Got the Essendon tip incorrect. The Swans did make a late charge, but the Bombers, they were just far too good in the end. And similar to the Gold Coast Bulldogs game, I went with the Dogs quite comfortably, but the Suns, they were pretty good, and they continued their home fortress run down at TIO Stadium. How about that? Got the Port Adelaide and Adelaide tip correct. What a showdown it was. The Crows held on. Similar, those 3 games were all similar. Port Adelaide actually kicked the last 2 goals within like the last 2 minutes, and it was looking like they were almost going to run over the top, but Adelaide had some really good moments in there, like that Mark Keane potentially game-saving mark. What a mark that was. Got the Richmond West Coast tip incorrect. It was actually looking like the Eagles were a decent chance to get up in that game. What a game that was. And how about that tackle from Richmond right at the end there? The rookie, that's definitely a tackle that Richmond will remember there. I did get the correct scoreline for that, though, because I did only say Actually, no, it was the next game I got the correct scoreline for. Forget that. Between Geelong and GWS. What a game that was. We had some really close games. I think this was also the average margin of winning this game was like 10 points, and no one actually won by over 15 points, which is crazy, which is the closest round in history or something like that. So that's crazy. But I do get the correct scoreline because I only said the Cats to win by 8. The Giants actually won by 4. And how about them? They've won their last 5 down at GMHBA. That's absolutely insane. And then North Melbourne and Brisbane ended off with a draw. Credit to North, though, for actually getting some premiership points on the line. I thought it's just going to be one of those games where they put up a good fight, then Brisbane pull away. But yeah, look, they still pick up 2 points in a draw, and they'd certainly take that over a loss. But they could have honestly won the game, North. They had a few opportunities late that they just butchered. So, yeah, technically I do get that tip correct, but let's move on to the next round. So we do start off round 10, or we do start off the round down back at TIO Stadium, where we have the Suns taking on the Hawks. Now, the Suns, they'll be liking this fixture, obviously, because they do stay in Darwin, I believe, and they've just really made this kind of home ground a real fortress when you look at it. I think they've won their last 7 there, so they're pretty much unstoppable there. As for the Hawks last week, well, they were still pretty good against the Ds. I felt like for the first half, though, they were pretty poor, and they probably weren't playing their best football, but in the end of the day, they just pulled away when they needed to, and yeah, they ended up getting the victory quite comfortably in the end by 6 goals, so yeah, look there, Jack Gunston put on another absolute display at the G, still looking like his prime form, just kicking goals, and helped them really pull away. I think this is going to be one of the better games of the round. I think this is 2 really hot teams right now that are in form. The Hawks have won 3 in a row, and the Suns still continuing to mostly win every week. So I think this is going to be a close game, but considering that the Suns do usually win here, and they're staying in Darwin for the week, I think that they'll be able to get up. They always adapt to the conditions well, and we saw them get up here last year on the Thursday night prime time against Geelong. So I think they're going to do it again. I think the Suns, they're going to win this. I think it will be relatively close, but I think the Suns are just going to be too strong down at Darwin. I'm going to say the Suns to win by 14 points to kick off the round. We head over to the SCG now, where we have the Swans taking on the Blues. 2 more of the disappointing teams in the comp as for their starts, and especially Sydney. You know, Carlton have actually picked up a bit of form, getting the win over the Saints, but the Swans, they've just continued to be disappointing. Obviously against the Bombers, yes, they've still got some injuries, but that was a really poor performance. At honestly one stage, I was honestly looking like they were going to lose the game by 80 in that first quarter. They just conceded 3 50-metre penalties, which is pretty disappointing for the Swans. I thought some of them weren't there, but they conceded like the first 3 goals off a 50-metre penalty, so which is like a record or something in AFL history. So that's was disappointing for them, and Essendon just got under their skin, and they were able to claw back the margin down to 8, but Essendon, they were just the stronger team at the end of the day. As for the Blues, well, they got the job done over the Saints in a bit more of a low-scoring game. Certainly felt like they did give a response after the Saints started off pretty hot. Jack Higgins started off pretty hot in their forwards, but Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay just got really working. They were able to kick goals and take advantage of the Saints' poor accurate kicking. Carlton's weren't much better, but they were just able to affect the scoreboard more and damage it. And yeah, look, they ended up getting the results. So it's going to be another tough tip down here in Sydney. I am slightly leaning towards the Blues, though. I think that they'll be able to continue that good form. This tip could change because I do think it does depend on the teams. So I might be changing it. I think I am going to go the Blues, though. They don't play the best at the SCG. The Swans usually do get up here, but I think the Blues, they're just in some really good form. And if Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay, they're looking back to their best, like Harry did last week, kick the silver goal against the Saints, I think they should be able to win the match here. I'm going to say the Blues to win this by 18 points. This tip could change, though. And yeah, the Swans season to pretty much almost be over now. So yeah, the Blues by 18 points in this one. We head back over to the G now, where we have Collingwood taking on Adelaide. Now, the Pies, they got a massive response after their close loss to Geelong the previous week against the Dockers over in Perth, and they actually rested quite a few of their players, some of the older guys, and I was going to change my tip to Freo. Luckily, I did stick with Collingwood, so I ended up getting the points for that one. As for the Crows, well, they're starting to look a bit more back in form again. They have been one of the more inconsistent teams in the comp, but they have got 2 wins in a row, and yeah, look, they just really stood up when the moments mattered, and they took their chances, unlike Port. And like we said, that match-saving mark by Mark Keane was one of the better marks of the year. They just really embraced those moments, and in the end, it got them over the line in yet another showdown like they have been able to do in the past. Now, when you do look at the head-to-head here, it does favour Collingwood pretty massively here. So the Pies, I think they've won like 10 games in a row against the Crows, or 11 games in a row, which is absolutely crazy. So yeah, look, I am slightly leaning towards the Pies here. I think when you look at the head-to-head, they match up well. Their starters should be back in. They should be including a couple of those players. I don't think there are any injury concerns around that now that they are back at the G. And usually it is always a close game between these two sides. I think the Pies, they're just going to be too strong here. I'm going to say the Pies to win by 24 points. I'm not sure if you can trust Adelaide away from home. And the head-to-head says it all. 11 of those last games they've all won. They have been close, but I think the Pies, they're just going to be too strong. So I'm going to say the Pies to win by 24 points at the G. We head back over to NG now, where we have the Giants taking on the Dockers. Now, the Dockers, they were pretty, still just disappointing. At least they did start off much more hot, unlike the Saints game, and they were able to put a bit more scores on the board. They moved the football much more well, and that's what they can do back at home. But, yeah, look, they arguably should have still won the game, even though Collingwood have all their players out. That's where they should have won the game, just through that midfield. It didn't quite work out, so they were still disappointing. Obviously not as disappointing the week before, but yeah, still pretty disappointing they couldn't get the win there. As for the Giants, well, they needed that win. Otherwise, they would have been 4-5. And can that be the thing that shifts their season now? Can they start to build more momentum off of that? They do play Geelong quite well down there in Geelong. They've won their last 4 before that, and they certainly took advantage of that, just winning the contest. And yeah, look, they did get a bit lucky at the end because Mark Blicavs and Tyson Stengel did miss a couple of sitters in front of goal, but they ended up holding on, and that's what they needed. So they're back at home at NG. I think Freo have been in disappointing form, and yeah, look, the Dockers, they need to win this, otherwise their season's looking much more in doubt now. They wouldn't want to go 4-6 here, but unfortunately for them, I just can't see them winning this. I think the Giants, they'll be just too strong at home. Back at NG, I think this is where they can start to build back some more form and break back into the top 4 now, because they would want to do that if they can just bank these wins back at home. I'm going to say the Giants by 19 points at NG. We move on to the Adelaide Oval now, where we do our Port Adelaide taking Geelong on the Saturday night. Now, look, the Power, they were pretty disappointing against Adelaide. They stuck with them for 3 quarters. Then at the start of the 4th and towards the back end of the 3rd quarter, Adelaide just pulled away. They did claw back the margin back to a kick, and they kicked the last 2 goals in like the last 4 minutes. It's looking like they were going to storm home, obviously. They just couldn't really stand up when the moments mattered most, and they gave the Crows yet another win in the showdown. As for the Cats, well, I feel like you could say they were disappointing, just mainly in front of goal. I still feel like they played the ground really well at GMHBA. It was a high-scoring game in the end, but they just couldn't get the wood over the Giants, which they haven't been able to in the past. They haven't been the Giants since 2020, so that was pretty disappointing there. But they do move back to the Adelaide Oval, where we all know last year in the qualifying final, the Cats did thrash them by 84 points, so they certainly won't be any fearful of the power, unlike the Giants, the Cats. So I think that they'll be looking to win this game. This is at the Adelaide Oval, where I definitely could see the power responding, because kind of like Sydney and Fremantle, if they don't win this, their season is pretty much over as well. So I think this is going to be a must-win game. But unfortunately for them, just like the Dockers, I just can't see them winning here. I think the Cats, they'll just be too strong. I think this is going to be a very close game, though. I think this is going to go down to the wire, but I'm going to say the Cats to win it in an absolute thriller and a much more closer game by 3 points at the Adelaide Oval. We move on to Marvel now for the first game of the round at Marvel, I do believe, where we have the Bombers taking on the Bulldogs. Now, the Bombers, they haven't really been convincing in the sides that they have been facing, but as the saying always goes, and which is just reality, unfortunately, is that you can only beat who you do face. So, yeah, look, they have been able to get the results there, the Bombers, and they just sit outside the 8, so they'll be looking to win this. And I will have to say, I've kind of underrated the Bombers coming into this year. I did have them quite high in my preseason ladder. I only had them just missing the 8, but I haven't really been backing them in. They have been proving me a lot wrong there, the Bombers, so credit to them. As for the Bulldogs, they just couldn't get over the line against the Suns. I think the Suns just quality on paper just stood up when the Bulldogs did have the injuries. And yeah, look, you can't really say they were disappointing, the Bulldogs. The Suns were just better at their home ground, and but this is where they've got to respond, the Bulldogs, against the Bombers back at Marvel. It's going to be I think this game should have a lot of hype coming into it, because two sides that are pretty much in form. Obviously, the Bulldogs losing last week, but the Bulldogs, I think they're still hot, and they wouldn't want to lose this. Neither would the Bombers, because yeah, this could really make or break their seasons here, and it'll be a bit of a momentum killer if the Bulldogs do lose this as well. But I just can't really trust the Bombers. I think this might just be a game where they don't show up. I know they have been showing up and getting the victories lately against some less convincing sides, like against the Swans, West Coast and North, but I think they're facing a real test, and the Dogs, they play some great footy at Marvel, even with their out. So I think this is going to be where the Bombers just don't show up, unfortunately. I'm going to go the Bulldogs to get a comfortable win here by 28 points at Marvel on the Saturday night. We have another very interesting game where the Tigers, who weren't predicted to win a game this year, might actually have another game at the round here. We have North Melbourne taking on Richmond, and it's very rare to say two of the bottom teams that we didn't expect to be quite good this year actually picking up premiership points in the weekend. Obviously, the Roos not picking up a win, but they still picked up 2 points. And as for the Tigers, picking up their third win of the season, yeah, look, if they just lose all their games from here, the Tigers, I still don't think we're going to say they're even that bad of a team, because they've still won 3 games. It's looking like they're probably not going to win the wooden spoon now, with the Eagles not even winning a game this year. So, yeah, look, they've certainly taken advantage of those poor sides, and they've been able to get the results, and they might even be going for 4 here against North, who I definitely could see them beating. Now, the Roos, look, they did get the draw against Brisbane. They had a couple of opportunities late, like I did say, to get the win there. They just a fumbly team, so it was disappointing, but credit to them taking it up to the Premiers down at Blundstone. They do play some great footy there. I think we saw them get the result against the Suns, and they did have a narrow loss last year there to a couple of sides as well, and obviously picking up the draw. I think this North Melbourne will like this fixture, because they do match up well against the Tigers. I know the Tigers have won 3 games this year, and I haven't been backing them in a lot despite their form, but I'm actually leaning towards North. I think that they should be able to get it done still. You just can't underrate them. This is at the G, though, so this tip could change, but I'm going to go North. I think they still match up well against them. I think they still have a lot more taller players than Richmond, and they do have slightly a bit more experience than Richmond. I think this is where North now, they do pick up a bit of momentum with that draw. Just picking up premiership points is the main thing. I think this is going to be a very close game, and I'm going to go the Roos here in a win by 9 points at the G. We move over east now to the Gabba, where we do have the Ds taking on the Lions. Now, the Lions, you could say they were disappointing down in Blundstone. Look, I feel like they just got shown up by a better opponent. You know, they haven't been playing their most convincing football this year, and out of all teams to show them, it was North who actually had a draw to them. And yeah, look, the Lions, they could have won the game. Eric Hipple did miss a snap that could have pretty much sealed the game to bed. But yeah, look, they just kept the Rose in it. But at least they didn't lose to North, because you just don't want to be that team. But they still pick up 2 premiership points, which does help them. They're still first on the ladder, so you do have to give them credit where credit is due. As for the D's, well, they had 3 wins in a row, but they did end up going down to the Hawks by 35. The Hawks, they just have a much more of the unexciting list in there. The quality just proved a bit too strong for the D's back at the G. And yeah, look, now they're 3-6 after winning those 3. So if they had won the Hawks game, it would have been 4-5. But when you do start off 0-5 and you have a poor start to your season, that is what shows. So now they're 3-6. I'm not sure if their season's still alive here, but the Lions back at the Gabba, I've just got to be going with the Lions. The D's did play them last year, and they actually played some really good football. They only went down by 5 points, but I think if you're the Lions, they're just going to be too strong. I'm actually going to go Brisbane in thrashing, but despite them not being that convincing, I think this is where the Lions could just come out and absolutely thrash Melbourne. I'm going to go Brisbane here by 39 points at the Gabba. We head to Optus now for the last game of the round, when we do have the Eagles, who are currently winless, taking on my Saints. Now, as a Saints fan coming into this, I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I might be going to this game, and yeah, look, we just don't want to be that team that does lose to West Coaster, though. Maybe we do have a bit of excuses if we do lose, because the Eagles, they were all right against the Tigers. But again, kind of like North, they just have a few butchered opportunities late. You know, I think they had a few opportunities late, the Eagles, and obviously they did get run down on that tackle, which did ultimately cost them the game, because they could have won the game if they had have kicked a goal there. But yeah, credit to Richmond there, and you could see the emotion on Andrew McWalter's face in the box rooms. As for the Saints, well, yeah, look, they just couldn't kick straight around the ground, and especially Brad Hill, I thought he had a really disappointing game. And I think the Blues, when you look at their list, it is just a bit better than ours, I feel like. And I feel like the quality showed in kicking and just the overall game style. I do think we win this game, though. I just don't want us to be the first team that loses to West Coast. I'm not that overly confident, but I'm still going to have faith and back in the Saints to win here. I think this is going to be kind of a close-ish game, but I'm going to go with the Saints to win by 10 points. I do think the Eagles can be competitive and put up a bit of fight like we have seen them do this year to sides like Brisbane and Essendon at home. They put up a good fight, and I think this is going to be a similar game, but I'm going to back in the Saints to win by 10 points at Optus. So everyone, those are my tips for the round. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with me with my tips in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.